Hello and welcome to Des and Marco, the podcast listened to by more than 30 unique listeners. I'm Marco.
And I'm Des.
And as per our traditions, let's start with our beers of the week. Des, what did you pick?
I've gone all out today and I've found a craft beer from the far lands of Japan.
Wow.
Wow, indeed. I've got a fun fact about Japanese beer, and I don't know whether to start with it or end with it. But today's beer is made by the Kiuchi Brewery, and it's the Hitachino Nest, the white ale.
And it has a nice little owl on the bottle.
It's very Japanese. The bottle is like not a normal bottle. It's kind of like a squat little bottle, very Japanese. How about yourself?
All right, since last time you criticized us for picking beers from the countries we live in, so the UK and the Netherlands, I felt bad, and I decided also to broaden my horizons, and I picked an Irish beer. Also to commemorate the fact that I lived there for a few years. So I picked a Guinness, but not just any Guinness, the West Indies Porter, which is a reimagining of the original beer Guinness made when they started exporting it. It's inspired by a recipe devised by their brewers back in 1801.
Good stuff.
Yeah, well anyway, let's get right to it and start drinking. Cheers.
Oh wow, this beer is good.
This one tastes like Guinness. All right, so let's start with a little news. You know, after the Christmas special and the Best of 2020 special, we're going back to our usual format.
I got a complaint from a listener.
No way!
A proper complaint. It was like, again, something of vital importance. And it was in reference to Borat. And the fans who recreated that famous scene, I erroneously said that they were wearing a tankini.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's a mankini.
Oh.
And they felt the need to tell me about this, and I don't know what's worse. Correction made. I'll add an addendum to the podcast and say, mea culpa, but let's move on. Let bygones be bygones.
Also, this is proof that we listen to our fan base.
Our fan.
Yeah, it's a fan named base.
Yes.
Anyway, in the news, I think the biggest news of the week in the tech world was that Slack was down for a few hours during the week, which led to probably the highest productivity peak of the last few weeks.
Well, it's bad news though, isn't it? Because beginning of a year, and you're thinking 2021 is going to be so much better than 2020, and Slack, one of the biggest work productivity tools, was completely out, worldwide.
Yeah, I bet the people over at Microsoft Teams were still celebrating from the New Year's.
But then Slack has just recently been bought out by Salesforce, exactly. So again, it's not good for them. You know, they've made this massive acquisition, and a very public service failure occurs on the first day of the year within months of it being bought.
Weeks even. Yeah, so it was all over the news. It was actually all over the news within the company that I work for. It was also pretty good because it happened in the afternoon, in my afternoon. So, after a very long and very heavy and very busy year end at work, it was really nice to just kind of be offline for that couple of hours. I mean, I still had email and I was continuing to work, but all the little questions sort of died down and it was actually pretty pleasant.
You could just focus on what you needed to do, which was nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't doing much that day, and that just killed it. My rest of the day, I stopped doing anything, which was a very welcome start to the year. So I don't get why everybody was complaining. Regardless of that, Slack is a really, really handy tool, especially now that everybody is working remotely, or at least they are in my company. It's very, very powerful. You've grown to rely on it more and more. Also because you can share your screen, you can call. It's a very you can do a lot of things.
We use Teams in our workplace, and my God, I mean, we got it simply because of the pandemic. I don't want to give away the name of my employer or what I do exactly, but before the pandemic, they had the foresight to say, no, none of our employees can work from home. It's an unnecessary expense. So they didn't invest in it. And then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden we're playing catch up.
Yeah.
Which was short-sighted because people want more flexibility, and working from home, even before the pandemic, is kind of goes hand in hand with a flexible lifestyle. Anyway, people just don't know how to use Teams where I work. It started off as being a place to like focus conversations regarding certain projects or whatever. And I have just got like 1 million teams now, and they're just pointless. Like, people think they're being productive because they've created a new team. It's like, I don't need more teams. I see the potential, don't get me wrong. It's really good. And when it works really well. And we're able to do things at like an international level using teams. And it works really well, especially now that like the whole etiquette has been sorted out. Like, when it started, everyone was like joining, the microphones were open, there was loops everywhere, audio like bursting my ears. Whereas now it's kind of like everyone joins in muted, people turn on their webcam at appropriate moments, you know, your screen's not flooded with loads of nonsense. It's improved drastically, but there's still those who don't know how to use it.
Yeah, I agree. Things have improved. But now we're increasingly reliant on these tools, so an outage like the one that Slack had this week can feel it a lot more. Because all the previous times that Slack has been down and we were all in the office, I would just walk up to the person and ask them whatever I needed. Now it's a little bit more difficult to walk up to the person and ask. Also because I think my closest teammate is about 2 kilometers away.
Which is inhuman distances.
Yeah, no one can cover that. And then secondly, the second news or kind of follow-up thing that I wanted to do is, in our previous episode, you mentioned as an honorable mention for best movies of 2020, you mentioned Soul, and I finally got around to see it. And like, I really wanted to like it more so that I could come on the show and say, Dennis, you're wrong, you're an idiot.
You're miserable sober, you're miserable drunk.
Yeah, exactly. You're just a bitter person and you can't review stuff. But no, you're right. You are a bitter person, but but I pretty much agree with what you said. I like the premise. This guy who has a passion for music has an accident and dies, and then his soul gets, instead of going to
the great beyond,
which is Pixar's version of heaven, I guess, he's kind of rerouted to where souls are getting prepared to go to Earth. So instead of being with, let's say, old people who died, he's with children who are about to be born. And then he finds a loophole because he's desperately trying to go back to Earth to live one of his dreams.
Don't spoil the movie now, because you've given a lot away as it is.
And at the end, the part that I liked...
that twist was, whoa!
But you're right. I mean, it felt like a little bit of...
a mix between Inside Out, Onwards, and Up.
Put all that into a blender, you get this movie, which I liked it more than Onwards. Also, yesterday I started watching random YouTube videos about it, and there are so many Easter eggs in, like, all Pixar movies, but, like, you can find references to most other Pixar movies.
Oh, I'll need to watch that. I looked for that room 212 or whatever it is.
113.
113, that's the room.
They always reference it, because it's the room where most of the people who work there or who founded it
took that class.
Yeah, it's a room in the university. I can't remember which university it was. Anyway, yeah, it felt like it could have been so much better, and they tried to make you tear up at the end, but I don't think it quite got there.
So you didn't tear up in the end?
No.
You're like, no, this movie's terrible.
No, it's not terrible. It's very, very enjoyable, and something that I actually really appreciate of movies nowadays, it's short. It's like,
I know, right?
Every movie seems to be super long.
They want to make movies 2.5 hours long. I'm like, I don't have that time.
Yeah. So yesterday when I was kind of like ranking it in my head among other Pixar movies, I would say it's above all sequels, with possibly the exception of the Toy Story ones. But it's below everything else. I mean, Up was better, WALL-E was better, Coco was better, Inside Out was better. So in the end, I agree with your opinion of the movie.
So some good things happen from a Slack outage. Gives you the time to go watch a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Again, don't tell my boss. I think he listens to this. Although I think he was off, so it's fine.
Talking about not having time for stuff, I think this is a perfect segue to what we want to discuss next. And I think this is something that you are really into at the moment, so I'll give you the honors.
It's something that's near and dear to my heart, and mostly I like this because I'm really jealous of the people who do it. Are you familiar with the concept of speedrunning?
I am. Well, my understanding of it is that players are out there trying to finish a game as fast as possible, and they're allowed to use any given method with the exception of using cheat codes. So that means they're allowed to use glitches which are part of the game's programming, and they're allowed to use like bad coding and abuse of it, but they're not allowed to input any of their own code or input any cheat codes.
Yeah, that's right. So to sum it up, it's finishing a video game really, really fast. And it's a whole universe on the internet of this. I find it fascinating because, like you said, players get to use any means necessary to just finish the game earlier. So like glitches or bugs or whatever, they can do that. And there's a huge speedrunning community. Almost every game you can imagine has been subject to a speedrun. One of the things that's on right now, if you're listening at the time of recording. Otherwise, it's not. But so one of the things that I'm really into is watching AGDQ or SGDQ, depending on what time of the year it is. AGDQ stands for Awesome Games Done Quick, and SGDQ is Summer Games Done Quick. It's a, I think, week-long marathon, and it happens again like twice a year, usually in January and in June, July. Again, like it's 1 week where pre-corona, the company that organizes this event puts a bunch of speedrunners in a hotel for a week, and these people stream the video game that they're good at. And the interesting thing is that you can obviously watch it live on Twitch and on their website, which is gamesdonequick.com, and you can donate. The purpose of this event is to raise money for the Prevent Cancer Foundation and Doctors Without Borders. So it's a really noble cause, let's say, and it's just amazing. And the way you can donate is, I think you can either donate directly to the main, like to the whole event, or they also do like specific donations. Like, do you want the player to pick the blue character or the red character? And so you vote by donating money, and then whichever raises most money, the player then chooses that.
Oh, that's a good way to keep the audience like engaged.
Yeah, so it's 10 years old. I think it started in 2010, 2011, something like that. It started off as a website that basically collected all these, let's say, world records for, or the rankings for how to finish a game, or for how long players have taken to finish a game. And now it's its own separate company. I think the Games Done Quick became itself like a non-profit company to organize these events. And it's on like 24 hours a day for the duration of the event. So it's like, obviously the last two editions, they were remote, but all the previous editions are on, like, you can find them on YouTube and you can find them on Twitch. And they're just amazing. Like the atmosphere that's there, like everybody's cheering, and whenever like a guy pulls a difficult trick, I don't know, like it feels like such a supportive community. And one thing I really appreciate is at the end of every run, the player also thanks the community. And they're also, one thing that I've noticed a lot is they always kind of give a shout out to like a website or something where you can find, like, if you want to get into speedrunning, this is what you should do, this is a guide and everything. So I don't know, like I get a good feeling out of this because it feels like such a supportive community. And they always, let's say, usually the format is one guy is the speedrunner, and so he or she is playing the game, and then there's others usually on the couch next to the player who explain what's happening in the game. And it's always like so fascinating because it's like, oh yeah, this trick that he just pulled off, this was discovered by this player back in 2017, and it saved us 20 minutes off of the... and it's just, I don't know, like it feels like such a positive community, and everybody kind of helping each other out and everybody pushing.
I know exactly what you mean. So we mentioned it in the last few episodes. So, you know, like the Outer Worlds, how the quick speedrun does it in something like 20 minutes or something stupid.
Yeah.
Apparently there was a point in the game where you need to sort of get access to an office, but there's like obviously the secretary or the whatever who doesn't give you access to the office. And they've tried to find glitches. They tried to find like, do we shoot everyone in the room? But the room's heavily armed. So all these speedrunners were stuck at this point until someone figured out that you can pickpocket the receptionist, run to the door which you need access to. You don't have the key at this point. When the receptionist comes to the door, the script in the game is that when that character goes to the door, he automatically unlocks it.
Okay.
So they found a loophole in the sense that, usually you have to get the conversation option to get the key, which involves going to do some random task.
Yeah.
But if you pickpocket him, all NPCs are coded to respond by chasing you. So if you pickpocket, run to the door, he does what an NPC is meant to do and chases you. But then as soon as he reaches the door, the code kicks in that when in proximity of the door, open it.
Oh god. That's what I personally find so fascinating about speedrunning is some of these players, you see them, they rip a game apart, like completely. You probably know this, but one of my favorite video games of all time and one of my favorite series is Metroid Prime, which came out on the GameCube, which I didn't have, but I ended up playing it on the Wii. And it took me hours to beat it.
Days. Like in game time, it must have taken you, 70 hours to finish all 3 of them?
Oh, all 3 of them? Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, the other day I was watching a speedrun of during AGDQ, and they go out of bounds. The player goes out of the levels and then just kind of goes along them. It's just something out of this world. It's not, I mean, if you're not into this, it's not really entertaining to watch, but it's just, I am fascinated.
Of a similar concept, I saw like the Mario Kart ones, where there is such a intense community to try get the fastest laps, using exactly what you've described, because the way the Nintendo counts the time splits and stuff, they learn by playing and by reading the code or whatever, they learn how to make the fastest lap theoretically, and then they look at ways to try and make it. And for example, sometimes they go out of bounds, they go around the monument and back. So you can do a lap, which would usually take an average player like 2 minutes. They do it like in 6 seconds.
Yeah, it's insane. Because there's the ones who exploit the game's bugs, and then there's others that
which is
the
legal.
Players... Yeah. And then there's ones where just the player is just good. Like, they pull off tricks that I can't even imagine.
It's usually a combination of the two, though, isn't it? It's in the sense that you need to exploit the game to make sure you can get these tricks done, but you need to have the skill to be able to execute things at like millimetric time. Like, it has to be precise to the millisecond.
Yeah, exactly. Precise to the frame. I like this marathon because usually other players tell you what's going on and tell you how difficult tricks are. And some of them, they're like, oh yeah, and the player has 3 frames to do this trick. I'm speechless when I see these things. So if you want to see very, very talented players playing all sorts of video games, because they range from literally any game that you can think of. And for 7 days, 24 hours a day, you can put a lot of video games in.
I would recommend, if you're new to this, pick a speedrun of a game that you know you've played or you've liked, just so you can appreciate what goes into it.
Yeah.
And I think you'll enjoy it a lot more if it's a game you recognize as opposed to like a totally random game.
Yes, definitely. On the subject of speedrunning, there's one YouTube channel that I find also very entertaining, which is called Summoning Salt. Basically, this is a guy that does the history of specific speedruns. So every video is a different game. The one that I like the most is Super Metroid, because it's one of the most beloved games for speedrunning because it's not linear, so you can kind of go in whichever way you want. And he basically goes through in the years how the record went down. And now I think it's like 45 minutes or something, 44 minutes for something that took me still a few hours. He just tells you like basically, oh, and then in, I don't know, 1998, we found this trick. And then in 2004, we found this other trick. And it's also fascinating to see how games that are pretty old, like Super Metroid, which is from 94, if I'm not mistaken, players are still working on breaking it even further.
Just, abusing it to the max.
Yeah, or even Metroid Prime, which came out in the early 2000s. They found a trick to skip the final boss, or to skip one version of the final boss, maybe a year ago. Yeah, I just find it incredible. And one of the things that, again, that's really good is the fact that you'd think a bunch of, no disrespect, you'd think a bunch of nerds stuck in a room playing games wouldn't have a big audience. But in the last marathon they had, they raised 2.3 million. In the previous one, they raised 3 million. It's becoming quite a big deal now. And I just find it great that it's also for a good cause, apart from the fact that I find it entertaining.
Super nerdy.
Yeah, it is. Like, you really have to be into it. That's why I agree with your recommendation of, if you're going to start watching speedruns, start from games that you already know, such as Breath of the Wild. Oh. So how long did it take you to beat it?
I checked the playtime. And I played it from roughly 6 months after it was released when I started playing it. And I think it took me like 6 months to finish playing casually. And in those 6 months, I think I racked up something like 20 hours game time. And consider that this wasn't, this is me doing some side quests and, trying to find things in the game and actually holding off fighting the final boss because I wanted to get as much shit done as possible.
Yeah.
How about you?
No, it took me even more than that. So I finished almost everything. So I did like all the side quests. I did all the missions. I found all the shrines. And I think in-game time must have been at least 50. So the world record is 26 minutes.
No way!
It's insane. The guy does the plateau, which kind of serves the Great Plateau. It serves as a
tutorial area.
Yeah, where basically you get the 4 basic powers. I can't remember what they're called. And that's it. And then you get the glider, and then you're off. The whole world is
your oyster.
So the runner, he basically just goes in, gets the 4 powers really quickly, and then literally flies to Hyrule Castle to beat Ganon.
Okay, so I think we need to explain that Breath of the Wild is quite unique as games go, because there is the world, which is Hyrule, and there isn't like level 1, level 2, level 3, or even different areas. It's just, this is the world, go explore.
Yeah.
And the only thing you have to do is defeat the main boss, which you know from the beginning. And there's like a ever-present castle in the middle of the land that you can pretty much see from anywhere, which is where the boss is. And you have to basically adventure and become as strong, as powerful as you can before facing this bad guy. So the whole point is like you go around and you unlock powers, you become more powerful, you pick weapons that you like, etc., etc., etc. And when you're confident enough, you go and face the final boss. Whereas these guys, literally straight out of their mother's womb, babies heading to the slaughter. They just go straight for the big boss and they win by abusing of all the loopholes.
Yeah, and just by being really, really good. And I think that also goes back to, maybe we should do a separate episode about Breath of the Wild. But it is unique, like you say, and it's unique also in the sense that it's a very show, don't tell kind of game.
Yeah.
As in, from the beginning, it tells you see that big castle in the middle with that weird red and black light around it, or purple and black? That's the bad guy. Go in and kill it. But, you face your first enemies and you die immediately. Like at the beginning, it's a very difficult game to get into because you die so many times.
But we need to point out you're terrible at games.
And we need to point out that I'm terrible at games. But any normal player would see that if I can't face normal bad guys, there's no way I can go to the castle yet. And so you find ways to get more powerful and get more energy and get more stamina and get better weapons and such. And so that's what makes it unique. But then how you go about it, it's up to you.
That was a concept which took you ages to grasp. You kept on messaging me going, what do I do now? I'm like, whatever you want. And you were like, but I need to know where to go. I need like a mini-map telling me the directions to where I need to go and stuff like that. I was like, just go wherever you want. Follow the road.
Yeah, it took me a while to get into it because there's just too much freedom, if you get what I mean.
There's no direction. It's just, here you go. Go about it your own way.
Yeah, exactly. But even other very popular open world games, I don't know, like the Rockstar ones, they're open world, but they're not necessarily non-linear. I don't know how to put this, but you always get a point on your map that you have to go to start the mission, and then the mission, like it could be a side mission, it could be whatever, but you always know what's next. Here, there's literally nothing. No one tells you anything. You do the little kind of tutorial levels, and then that's it. And then you gotta go figure it out. And it took me so long to understand the beauty of it.
Take in that freedom.
Yeah, because at the beginning, you're literally in your underwear, and that's it. And you just kind of have to build an arsenal and get proper armor and learn the game. But at one point, it clicks. At one point, you're just like walking around and you see like, hey, what's that thing in the distance? And then you just go and see it. It's such a great game to just get lost in and waste time.
Someone once said that the actual game is the world, if that makes any sense, because the world is very natural. Like it's a proper ecosystem. Everything works in symbiosis with everything around it. It's about using their environment. And I realize this sounds like really nerdy, but it's very true. Like the world they have crafted is amazing. Like you chop down a tree and you can use that tree to create a bridge. where create that bridge is entirely up to you. You know, you can collect fruits and make dishes. You can use things as bait. You can, like, the whole world is interlinked with every other aspect of that world. It's just intricately done. You're right. We should probably talk about this another day, but it's a fantastic game.
Definitely. And a while back, Nintendo announced that they're developing a sequel.
I know. This is our hype of the week. It was meant to be released at the end of 2020, but in typical Nintendo fashion.
Was it?
They never actually gave a release date. They announced, I think the video came out in 2019, and it was just a teaser trailer, and they said the sequel to Breath of the Wild is in development. That was all it said. And we know a lot, but we don't know a lot. We know it's based on the same engine as Breath of the Wild, which is good news because it was a fantastic engine. And it also means there's less likely to be massive delays because they're working with a known entity.
Yeah.
But at the same time, COVID has struck, and so it's obviously had restrictions. But realistically, they're looking at releasing it in late 2021. And unlike other companies, cough, cough, CD Projekt Red, they're not announcing a release date. They're, you know, when it's ready, they'll announce it.
In a very Nintendo
Exactly.
fashion. Because they tend to release games whenever they're ready, not whenever the marketing tells them to. And then you get situations like Metroid Prime 4 that has been in development for 4 years across 2 different development studios. And then there's Metroid fans like me who are just waiting.
But a lot of people were really angry at the fact that Metroid Prime 4 was cancelled/delayed. But the game was finished. But the Nintendo quality control people, they said this doesn't live up to our expectations, and they refused to release a game which isn't good enough. So they started again. They got a new studio and they're starting from scratch, which is why it's been delayed so much.
Yeah, that's right. It's now being developed by Retro Studios, which is the studio that developed the first 3 amazing Metroid games, or Metroid Prime games. But anyway, sorry, back on track. What is it that we know about Breath of the Wild 2?
You gotta love the internet. Of all the possible things to get excited about, the internet is most excited about Zelda's new haircut.
Oh, I saw! Because she has short hair.
She has short hair, and the internet went crazy, because it's the first game ever where Princess Zelda, who's your typical fairy, like long blonde hair or whatever, has got short hair, and the internet lost it. And I'm like, really? That's what you pick up on? We know it's a sequel. We know it's set in the same world.
Unlike all the other Zelda games. Like every other Zelda game prior to this one is a standalone game.
Exactly. So they're all based on the Legend of Zelda. Each one is set in a different time, in a different world, with the main characters, which are the same. So it's a reimagining every single time. Whereas this is an actual sequel.
Although Nintendo has released an official timeline of all the Zelda games, and they're basically saying that they're all part of the same world and they're all sequels of each other, but I think it's more Nintendo trying to fit them into
a narrative.
While in reality, you can pick up Breath of the Wild without having played any of the previous ones.
Oh yeah. The stories are all independent.
Yeah.
That's something Nintendo have always done well. Like, I suspect even the next Zelda, having played the previous one, will not be a prerequisite.
I don't know, because this is the first time that they actually do a sequel.
But they'll address what happened in the first one. Like, there'll be a starting point. You know, you're not going to be expected to know how to use all the controls and everything like that. Like, as a comparison, you know, like the Mass Effect games. If you played the second one, it actually loaded your character from the first one.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is kind of cool, but this is not going to be like that, is it?
No, absolutely not. But then what's left for us to know about it?
One thing which brought me into the hype story was that the internet has finally discovered that all the non-playable characters in Zelda... Do you remember the Nintendo Wii's, like, Mii characters?
Yes.
Well, that was, like, an early prototype of Nintendo's facial character modeling software.
You mean those smooth characters with, like, a face drawn on it?
Yeah, the really stupid 3D models, and, like, people made, like, Mr. Bean lookalikes.
Yeah.
And they're called Miis. Well, it turns out the non-playable characters in Zelda are an evolution of that, just done on a slightly better processor. And they discovered that you can swap in your old Mii files and replace characters in the game.
Really?
So people have started putting pictures of, like, really stupid Miis inside Zelda.
Okay.
The result is inappropriately funny. It's like, it shouldn't be funny, but it is. It's just so stupid.
Okay. No, now I'm curious to see them.
I'll send you some links. I might put some in the episode notes.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. Don't expect God knows what. It's just ridiculous. And it's just so simple and yet so fun.
Okay, I'll have a look at those. Also, by the way, did you know that they kind of hid a couple of characters in Breath of the Wild? Like real life characters, they put them as, or they made a tribute to them in the game.
Yeah, to the designer, the guy who does...
Yeah, the former president, Satoru Iwata.
Satoru Iwata, that's right. And he's like references the white deer or something.
Yeah, like he's this guy, like it's him. Like if you look at him, he's even got the same frame, glasses and everything. And he's this guy that kind of like goes up a mountain to find this magical deer or whatever it is. But also, did you know that Robin Williams is in it?
Yes, who was a big fan. His daughter is called Zelda.
Yeah, because of the game. He was a huge fan and he had recently passed away when the game came out, when the Breath of the Wild came out. So they, as a tribute, they put his character in. And apparently, like, he's also like a pretty funny or eccentric character as well.
May he rest in peace. I was a huge fan and still am. So it was a very nice touch of Nintendo to honor him like that.
Yeah, but it's not the first time they do it. I don't know.
Their heart's in the right place.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, there's one more thing you wanted to talk about.
That's right. And I think you kind of want to talk about it as well. We mentioned it as one of our best games of 2020. Actually, the one game that both of us mentioned. And can we talk about Hades? I've been playing it non-stop ever since I bought it. I got it off a Christmas sale. Oh my god, it's so good. I'm still terrible at it, but it's just so good. I can't stop playing it.
It's very addictive because every time you play, you get that little bit better. And the game mechanics are just so fluid that you just want to play again and again and again. Like, you don't get tired. It's just very short bursts of gaming, if that makes any sense, which is beautifully balanced.
Yeah, it can be short bursts.
Well, again, you're not very good at games.
No, but I mean, I find it very difficult to put down. As in, I'll play once, twice, and then I just keep playing it because I can't stop. At its core, it's a roguelike. That's the term. So you go through a dungeon, essentially. And the goal is to get out of it. And by getting out of it, you just have to kill a bunch of enemies. Like, it's level after level after level, or room after room after room. And that's it. Like, at its core, that's what it is. Which sounds boring to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. But on top of that, they built this whole story, which makes it so compelling or so addictive, which I think that's the key difference with other similar games.
I have finished the game now, and I thought I would stop playing it, but I won't because I just want to unlock everything now.
Yeah, it's a game that wants people to be completionists. So there's, I think, 4 different currencies, and each currency unlocks different aspects of the game. So you can improve your weapons, you can improve your, let's say, bonuses you have, you can improve the room that you're in. So the point of the game is that you are the son of Hades. So it's, if you're also into Greek mythology, this is great because it's pretty accurate, I think.
It's very accurate.
So you're the son of Hades. You've lived in hell, or
the underworld.
In the underworld, you've lived there your entire life and you want to get out. As you play, you understand why, but you want to get out. And so you fight your way out of hell. Even if you beat it, I think the term you used was finish it. So beating it and finishing it are 2 different things in this game.
Escaping the underworld.
Yeah.
So when you reach the surface.
Even if you escape the underworld and then you have to start over, you're not really done.
No.
Like, it keeps you playing.
And without giving spoilers away, I think that's the best way we can put it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're terrible at English and we don't know what the hell we're saying.
Yeah, and also by the, we're what, like half an hour in? We're already pretty drunk. So, and I don't know. I just, like, I'm surprised at how such a simple game keeps me so hooked.
Go try it out for yourselves, guys. It has won Game of the Year from multiple award-giving people. And it's won Indie Game of the Year by other award-giving people. It's definitely worth it.
How do you become an award-giving person?
Well, you have to give an award.
Oh, okay.
That's it. And we gave it an award as well, so...
That's right. Game of the Year.
Okay, I think we're running out of time, so we'll cut the episode because we don't want another hour-long episode to distract you guys from very important things that you're doing.
Plus, Slack is down, so you're not really doing anything, are you?
Yeah, exactly. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So, Marco, how was your beer?
So, I was expecting a bit more in terms of this is meant to be the fancy Guinness, and it tastes like regular Guinness. I'm going to give it 2.5.
2.5?
Yeah.
Your lowest score ever. You're such a miserable person, Marco.
No, because you get a fancy Guinness. You're expecting it to be better than Guinness, and then it's not. It's not a bad beer. I like it. I would keep drinking it, but it's just compared to the expectations, it's not as good. And what about your fancy Japanese? Where do you find these beers, by the way?
I have to go to specialty shops.
Oh, okay.
This beer, 4.5 out of a full 6-pack. No, I take that back. 5 out of a full 6-pack. My highest score yet.
I think our highest score yet. But you can check in the spreadsheet that we'll add to the notes.
Yeah, go check on our beer database. You'll see the link in the notes. It's a white beer, and this one is brewed with coriander, orange peel, and nutmeg. And it's got refreshing, spicy notes and a soft flavor.
Okay, I'm sorry. You judged me last week for my chamomile and whatever.
Yeah, but this is Japanese. They do things differently. Random fact. Did you know that until 1994, only 4 companies were allowed to brew beer in Japan?
Really? That was probably like Kirin, Asahi, and I don't know which one.
Sapporo, probably.
Sapporo. Okay.
And is Asahi.
Yeah, I mentioned it. But anyway.
Okay, sorry. But anyway, and after 1994, they loosened the laws, and basically it allowed microbreweries to develop. And this particular brewery, Kiuchi Brewery, they've been making sake for like centuries.
Okay.
When they opened up the law, they said, okay, let's try beer. And the Japanese breweries at first were helpful and said, yeah, you need this, that, and the other. And they're like, oh, cool, fantastic. Where would we buy the equipment? And they were like, yeah, sure, we'll sell it to you. It will be $1 billion. And so they're like, okay, we can't do this. So then they actually went abroad and they found like breweries in Canada and America who offered to sell the equipment at like a fraction of the price, like something which a small enterprise could do.
Okay.
And then they started making their own beers, and now they're like a hugely successful international craft brewery, and the beer is fantastic. So go check them out. Kiuchi Brewery, and they make a whole series of beers called Hitachino. And you can recognize them by their incredibly cute little owl on the front.
Okay, I'll see if I can find. And that brings us to the end.
It does bring us to the end. Thanks for listening, guys. This has been the first episode of a new year, so hopefully it'll be a good year for everyone. So thanks for listening.
Yes, Happy New Year, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys. Super nerdy.